I'm joined by Coach Paul Knapstein, the athletic director and interim head football coach at St. Michael's Catholic High School in Fairhope, Alabama, now over this video call. Coach Paul, thank you for joining. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, William. It's been an exciting week or so down here.
Absolutely. A lot of news coming out of the Fairhope area, especially with your school, St. Michael's Catholic High School. Obviously, the biggest news is the hiring of Philip Rivers. So, Paul, just walk me through, obviously, a high-profile quarterback, a big name. Everyone that's a sports fan in America knows who Philip Rivers is. But as the new head coach in waiting, Philip Rivers still has a year with the Colts, maybe even more if he decides. But kind of walk me through this process of how everything came about of Philip Rivers being the next head coach.
Well, William, it's it's extremely interesting, but it's also extremely just, I think, out of this world in some ways. Philip and his wife Tiffany and their family have been friends with a family in our community for several years, and when the school opened 4 years ago, that family enrolled their kids here, and when the Rivers would come visit them, they would come by the school and look around. When you have 9 kids, and at that time they had 8 children, they always were looking for places maybe that the kids could go play or whatever else, and we kind of struck up a relationship with the family then. After this past football season, our head football coach Scott Phelps retired from coaching. He came to us actually really right as the pandemic was kind of getting to a high point, and said that he felt like it was time for him to step down. His youngest son is now a graduate of St. Michael, and he and his wife wanted to go see spend time and go see their 4 children all over the country and do things like that. And when that happened, we started a coaching search for Coach Phelps' replacement. But with all this uncertainty, we just didn't know where we could go. I mean, we didn't think we would have spring football, and we don't know what the summer holds. We're hopeful for a regular fall season, but we're still not sure, obviously. So we knew Philip had interest in coaching. He's expressed that publicly. We knew that he was going to retire. He and his family are going to retire down here when they do that, whenever that time is. So we started a conversation with him to see what his interest would be in being our head coach when he retires from the NFL. And like I said, it went obviously really well. And his family, his family's faith, and his take football out of the equation. Just they're a devout Catholic family. His vision for what a football program would look like just completely meshes well with our mission as a school, and it just everything kind of fell into place, and it's been a great experience so far.
Absolutely, really exciting news down there in Fairhope. Philip Rivers has had, and I guess will continue to have, hopefully with the Colts, a successful career. Obviously, that's kind of winding down now. Paul, would you say it's more of a time and place type thing, kind of the cards fell where they did? How would you analyze the whole situation in terms of he is an Alabama native and he's coming back and he wanted to be in the area, and so luck really doesn't play into it, more connections and people that but looking back on it, how would you analyze the whole situation that's kind of unfolded in the last month and a half?
I've thought about it several times, and it just is. We are a school of faith. We're a Catholic school, and we really kind of believe it's divine providence in some ways that all these things aligned. As I referenced, had the Rivers not been so close to some people down here, this probably never would have happened. But also, and this really had very little to do with it. But when I was at John Carroll, back when I coached at John Carroll for a few years back in the late 90s, and we played against Athens and Philip in the playoffs, and so we always had that common ground we could talk about, and we knew a lot. His dad, who coached for a long time, who's a Hall of Fame coach in the state, he and I knew a lot of similar people, or a lot of coaches, that we always had great conversations when he's around. So long story short, there's no other way to put it other than just everything kind of aligned, and it was very I guess just God's intervention. God's hand in this is unbelievable.
Right. Right. As an athletic director, what's the process like of hiring such a high-profile coach who had just signed a contract, a one-year contract in the NFL? What's that like working out the details of that, and naming him the head coach in waiting, but also negotiating with he still has a job and just signed a contract with the Colts in the NFL. What was that like for you as athletic director?
You know, a lot of once we got through the initial paperwork, so to speak, my boss, my principal, really handled all of the contract stuff, or all the agreement. We'll leave it at that. But we, just like any school system, we have a lot of different background checks and things like that people have to go through, and there's a lot of bureaucracy that all had to be done. Even whether you're Philip Rivers or just Joe Blow down the street, you have to go through the same processes. So that took a little bit of time, but not too long. As far as like Philip's contract, he stated, and the Colts have both stated publicly, he's on a year-to-year deal, and they both have interest in continuing past 1 year if it's in their best interest. So we'll see with that. And Philip said that in our press conference. At 38 years of age and a 17-year veteran of the NFL, you're pretty much on a 1 year deal every year you go. So that wasn't a huge, obviously, and obviously we're not competing with the NFL for salaries for employees. So that really had nothing to do with the negotiations.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really tough to compete with that. If you're anybody besides another NFL program, 1 year, $25 million deal he had there in Indianapolis. But how do you maintain a relationship with Philip Rivers? So you're going to be the interim head coach, I believe. That's correct?
That's correct.
How do you maintain that relationship with him? And that right now it's your athletic department and your program, but he's coming in. Is there any topic of conversation where you're in touch with him because he's got his season going on, but you're leading that program and that athletic department? Does he have any say-so in what goes on, despite him being up in Indianapolis for the next year or so?
Sure, he does. Because that was one of the reasons we chose this model to approach this. Is I have a lot of coaching experience. This will be my 28th year in coaching. For 17 years, I've coached football as a head coach or a coordinator, and I coached in college for a little bit. So we have a good background and a good staff. But even at that first day after the press conference, we spent a lot of time with our staff and Coach Rivers talking about how we could mesh our ideas to be a cohesive offensive and defensive plan for our team. He's given us some time, we've done some phone talks with him, and we've got anytime that we can get him live, we get him live, and just so we can share ideas with our staff and him, because while I'm excited about getting this opportunity to coach football again, and I'm going to do everything to the best of my ability. I know I'm a short timer in this job. I don't have an ego about I'm going to do it this way. We want everything to be as cohesive and seamless as possible for when that final transition goes to when Philip takes over full time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great approach, great way to handle it. How do you think this hiring affects not only your athletic department, but your school and your community in the city of Fairhope? What's that like down there?
It's hard. It's hard to really get a good gauge on that right now because of the current circumstances with the pandemic going on. Not everybody's out and about as much as they would be, but I can tell you that in the last week and a half or whatever it's been, I've done phone interviews with the Washington Post and the Indianapolis Star. Obviously our news was all over, the ESPN and the NFL Network and things like that. So from our school standpoint, obviously our name has been out in the public a lot, and being linked to someone, not the quality of Philip Rivers has been I'm sure we are getting a lot of mentions on Twitter still and things like that. So it's put our school in a good place, or just from a name recognition standpoint. Our school we're about 320 students, 9 through 12 this year, and we should be around 340 next year because we're still growing. But really, our growth pattern seals at about 360. I mean, we're between 90 to 100 kids per grade is where our comfort zone is. So from an enrollment side of it, it's not, obviously we're pretty much peaked where we are, until we would go build more buildings and things like that. And we're so new, we're not at that point. But, we have 3 Catholic elementary schools on this side of the bay as well that, students that come from those schools get preferential enrollment with us. So that's, kind of, we feel like obviously Philip Rivers being a part of our St. Michael Catholic High School athletic staff is gonna, obviously put us at the front of make sure everybody knows who we are and what we're doing, so to speak.
And with 9 children, of course, those numbers will be boosted exponentially when the Rivers family settles down in Fairhope. So you mentioned all the national media and attention, the interviews that you've done. Outside of athletics, what is your mission statement as a school? And what are you saying to people, not just that we hired Philip Rivers and we're getting national attention from that, but what is your message to reporters, national media, and saying, we hired Philip Rivers, but this is our school and we want to send this message? What is that message?
Our mission's very clear. Our mission statement is we want to form young men and women of faith that are are scholars, leaders, and disciples of Jesus Christ. We are a Catholic school, and our primary mission is to make sure we are teaching the faith to the people the students in our school, in our classes. I'd say we're probably 75 to 80% Catholic, in our school already. Everything we do is to make sure we're giving these young people the proper formation in their faith so they can live a life of faith and not just give lip service to it. And actually, that's kind of why, Philip Rivers is so appealing, was so appealing to us, was because of his very public faith and how he lives his life. Knock on wood, anything can happen, but he and his wife Tiffany and their family have dedicated so much of what they do to their faith, and they support Catholic youth organizations all over the country. And it just is. We also believe that our athletic department is just an extension of our classroom. So we're not, we don't want to have our athletes acting one way and then something else going on differently in the classroom. We try to practice what we preach.
With all the attention that you're getting, what a great platform, bringing in Philip Rivers and using that as a way to proclaim your mission as an athletic department, as a person, as a school. What a great opportunity for that. Paul, I want to ask you one final question here. Kind of deviating from high school football and moving more to the college ranks. My uncle Scott Russell, who's helped me set up this interview, told me you're a Tennessee fan. Obviously, Jeremy Pruitt has been making headlines in recent weeks with recruiting. But being a Tennessee fan down there in Fairhope, A, what's that like? And B, how optimistic are you for the future with this great recruiting class Tennessee's putting together?
Well, I'd like to correct one thing that Scott said. I'm a Rhodes College fan first and foremost, but after that, Tennessee is my second favorite team.
Former linebacker at Rhodes, correct?
Yes, many years ago, many decades ago at this point. But what I would tell you is, from what I've seen, and I don't normally follow a lot of recruiting stuff, but Jeremy Pruitt, Coach Pruitt, and the Tennessee staff has definitely put it on some people this year. I think they've got whatever the rank, all these mythical rankings, they're up to the second highest rated recruiting class for the 2021 season. You have to really be impressed with what they've done, how they ended last year, and how those kids. If I watch a lot of their games, obviously, and they definitely have a different spirit about them. They believe they could win games this year, which that wasn't the case for a while. And I can tell you from being a Tennessee fan in Alabama for the last over 20 years, it was a lot easier when Peyton Manning and T. Martin were quarterbacking and we were winning games against Alabama. But there really are more Tennessee fans down here than you would expect. You see a lot of Vols license plates and things like that down here. But still, hopefully we'll be able to walk around with our head high for a while. That'll be nice.
Yeah, that recruiting class is definitely going to make some noise. And as an Alabama guy, I'm pretty optimistic if Jeremy Pruitt can keep up doing what he's doing, that he might have the opportunity to follow in Saban's footsteps in Tuscaloosa. We'll see. That's a topic of conversation for another day. But Coach Paul Knapstein, athletic director at St. Michael's Catholic High School in Fairhope, thank you so much for joining, and appreciate the time you take to fill everybody in and give an update on the hiring of Philip Rivers and give your mission statement as an athletic department and as a school. I really appreciate it.
No problem, William. Thank you for having me on. Good luck.